diving deep into the ocean in this latest thriller that's based on a true story, but is it worth your time? Hello and welcome, Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of The Last Breath. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all your thoughts, let's have a nice discussion, and make sure to like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community, where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole, and getting right into the synopsis. Doing everything they can to make every second count, deep sea divers fight against the raging sea as they seek to save a crewmate that's buried hundreds of feet before the ocean's surface. And starting with the positive, The Last Breath delivers on a pretty fantastic production with a solid cast such as Woody Harrelson, Simu Liu, and Finn Cole that just do all the right things for their performances, delivering on what's all going on, the tension, the emotions, everything that's built up, and going back to the production, that's really where the immense nature of what this is based off of. This is inspired by the documentary of the same director that did this film, and they just made it more dramatized in this Hollywood cinematic way. There's pieces of the documentary that's sort of placed here and there, which I haven't seen the documentary itself just as of yet for the purpose of this video, and just knowing based on this film alone as a thriller, as a dramatized piece of the cinematic immersion into the depths of the ocean, it's something that's compelling by the nature of what they do with the production, making it look real, making it just deep within the ocean, and everything they're doing throughout what the characters get involved with, and the atmosphere that's just explored for the ocean that feels very different, and it feels immense for the way they're going deep into the waters, but also starting this film right off the bat, where this is essentially a one event film, going and talking with his wife to begin with the guy that gets caught down in the ocean, and then leading on throughout the film, starting on in that journey. There's a little bit of a starting point and exposition, starting up the crew, getting them all settled into the sub that leads them down into the ocean and doing all their typical routine that ends up setting everything in their own way. And there's bits to the character that they start up with that makes it compelling enough to make them understand the setup of what this film is all about, the background to how this film operates. And so there's an exploration into the characters based on the deep sea diving job in general, how we're able to explore that a little bit more without making it too boring to the sense of what you're all getting in the nitty-gritty details of everything, how it specifically operates. And so it's just heartwarming for the sense of actually exploring that part without doing too much overboard in the sense of what it's actually tackling. So the lighting and everything that tackles the production value as a whole is something to be noteworthy when going into it. For being such a loud film in theaters, it definitely is something that can be great when watching on the big screen. And going into the mix elements, of course I mentioned the expositional part of it. It can be long, a little bit dragging in some parts, maybe not necessarily in the slow, too boring for the sense of everything, but it is something I do want to mention because it won't be everyone's cup of tea. It's not dragging on with too much information that is not necessary for the purpose of this film, this narrative, as a fictional dramatized version of what the real events were like, but the way they go about that is still good enough for what you're tackling, but not necessarily gonna be the most exciting part of the film for everyone. Once you're getting into the action, which isn't necessarily immense, it's not super quick paced, because it's meant to be the intensity based on this guy getting trapped down in the ocean and locked in its place. So you have to figure out how he ends up getting there, and the length of time that figures out how we're gonna exactly get it out. It's not necessarily the most exciting story technically by those standards, So it's more for the purpose of getting you to know the idea of this real life story, this guy that survived what these event all entailed, and everyone's gonna essentially know what happens based on the subtext that they bleed onto the screen, other things, but it's informational enough that it can get your excitement going with what's going on, but not necessarily going to be for everyone depending on how it floats your boat with what's going on in the context of the film. Which takes me right into the negatives that even though I haven't watched the documentary to know the flow, and documentaries obviously have a different flow than narrative films, and so that's why I find this to be quite pleasing for the nature of what it tries to tackle, but ultimately some of the narrative that tries to immerse itself while also being truest as possible to what the source material could have been like, to what the event it would have immersed you in. It's starting this one event type of film that you don't necessarily get to know the characters as investful as you would like to. Maybe they would have to make it a little bit frictional, more in the sense of adding scenes in, develop the characters a lot more, because you sort of get the start of that, but you never get a lot more that make you care for them specifically as identifying those people for who they are, their accomplishments, their connections with each other, the chemistry that works in between each other. That ultimately, while there is, like I said, the start of everything, the obvious emotional connection with the human endangerment that's going on in this situation, and the endangerment that is going on with this job to begin with, doing one of the most dangerous jobs on earth, going deep into the ocean, changing some things with the electrical stuff and these different pipes and everything. It just ultimately feels like it degrades itself a little bit less because of the nature of what it ultimately tries to cover in a mix of a documentary style while also still trying to dramatize it in the best way it can. While it can be a good production, it doesn't necessarily build up the nice characters that a thriller really elevates itself up to be. And so that's just my personal review for The Last Breath, which I have to rate a simply 7 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of The Last Breath. Was it good? Was it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all your thoughts. Be respectful in the comments so we can have a nice discussion. And make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And so that's just all. And make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.